Welcome to another episode of Too Close to Home, a series in which we take a look at scary tales, haunted locations and mysteries from our Patreons' hometowns. So Melissa, Carly, Tara, Kimmy and Taylor, sit back, hit those lights and enjoy the horrors lurking on your doorsteps. Melissa Gervais, Wallingford, Connecticut. Wallingford, Connecticut is a New England town centrally located between New Haven and Hartford and Boston and New York. It was founded in 1670 and has a rich and diverse history. It's the birthplace of several prominent historical figures, including Aaron Jerome, Winston Churchill's great-great-grandfather, Lyman Hall signed the Declaration of Independence, and World War I flying ace Raoul Lufbery. And Wallingford is the place of one of the last witch trials in New England, which took place in the 1690s. But more importantly to us, it's the home place of Melissa, one of our patrons, and we're going to talk about the Wallingford shoebox murder. On Sunday, August 8, 1886, three young men out rambling through the countryside near Wallingford made a horrific discovery. Edward and Joseph Terrell and a friend were walking along an old logging road when Edward's dog approached a wooden crate that had been hidden in huckleberry bushes. At first, the three thought nothing of it until the dog started acting in an odd manner. He was barking, sniffing, and whining, and seemed disturbed by the box. The men took a closer look at the 30 by 12 wooden box and noticed the writing on the side said it contained half a dozen pairs of machine-sewed, fine-stitched men's shoes. However, the box gave off a particularly pungent smell that suggested it wasn't just shoes in there. The young men pried open the lid and discovered a bloody, dismembered male torso wrapped in straw and tar paper. After they alerted authorities and an examination was carried out, it was determined the body belonged to a healthy man, aged between 30 to 40 years old. He had died 5 to 10 days earlier and his stomach contained a large quantity of arsenic. At first, locals thought the body belonged to Albert Cooley, an old soldier who had recently gone missing, but this was later ruled out after Cooley turned up alive. Rumours started circulating that the torso belonged to a local arsonist who had been killed by his accomplice, or that a local tramp was the person in the box. However, all these rumours proved to be false, and despite extensive searches and inquiries by police, the identity of the man and where the rest of his body was a mystery. Because of the nature of the dismemberment, a local butcher came under suspicion after one of his employees mysteriously disappeared, until he too was discovered alive and well, living somewhere else. On September 26th, 6 weeks after the torso was found, a farmer found the victim's arms and legs near the spot where the shoebox was found, although there was still no sign of the head. The box itself was traced to a Fall River shoe factory, which had sent it to a shoe dealer in Chicago. The dealer had thrown it behind his store and several months later sold it to a man who later disappeared. That sparked more rumours that the victim was somehow connected to the recent Haymarket riots. Several people claimed to know about the Wallington shoebox murderer, including a local prostitute named Mabel Gage, although she refused to give details. 2 years later, she killed herself, possibly unable to live with the guilt. A constable also claimed he knew the murderer, but also refused to disclose who it was and said he would take the knowledge to his grave, and he did. To this day, the mystery of the Wallingford shoebox murder has never been solved, and the head has never been found, but the old logging road just outside of Wallingford, where the box was found, is still known as Shoebox Road, which I'm sure you're well aware of, Melissa. Christchurch is a town in Dorset on the southeast coast of England. It appears to have it all, from picture postcard cottages, a castle and a relaxing sandy coastline. However, it also has its fair share of ghosts. So Carly, we hope you enjoy the spookier part of your hometown. We'll look at the Christchurch Priory, which dates back to the mid-11th century when it was officially recorded in the Domesday Book as having 24 secular canons in the area, which meant it had a small number of priests all living in the building. The first permanent stone church was built in 1094 by one of William II's chief ministers and has an interesting legend attached to it. It's said that the church was originally intended to be built on top of St. Catherine's Hill, But during the last night before construction began, all of the building materials were mysteriously transported over 2 miles away to the location it stands on today. It's believed that the church got its name after Jesus Christ himself visited the building. The story says that in the 12th century, during the church's construction, a group of workers accidentally cut off one of the beams too short, which was an expensive and embarrassing mistake. At the time, one of the workers was a bit mysterious and would always keep himself to himself and ate alone. The day after the mistake, when the workers went to face their boss about their error, they found that the beam was the right length and had already been put into place, but the mysterious worker had disappeared and was never seen again. Many believe that Jesus was the saviour who fixed the mistake, and to this day the beam can still be seen, located in the ambulatory. However, aside from the history of the priory, it also has the reputation as being one of the most haunted places in Dorset. The spirits at the church are particularly active, and many people who have visited or worked there have witnessed them both inside and outside the building. The sightings are all very similar and describe apparitions of monks wearing their traditional monk robes with bald heads. They never speak or become aggressive in any way, and are just seen walking along for a few steps before fading away into nothing. There is also a lot of voice phenomena inside the church, with people capturing everything from general whispers to some more scary quotes, mentioning the devil and warnings to leave the area. And if that wasn't enough, just a few meters down the road from Christchurch Priory is the Old George Inn, a 14th century coach house with a mysterious and creepy past. During renovations many years ago, a priest hole was found, and inside was a torn, old-fashioned shirt, along with shoes and a heap of bones. A priest hole was used as a hiding place for priests, and were built into many of the Catholic houses of England, during the period where Catholics were persecuted by law in England. The one in the Old George Inn also gave access to medieval tunnels that ran from the pub to Christchurch Castle, although it seems this poor priest never made it out. Over the years, licensees and patrons of the inn have seen an array of strange occurrences, including plates turning on tables, pictures falling off walls, and wine bottles that have been put on separate tables, ending up all gathered on the same table with no human intervention. The inn is also said to be haunted by a grey lady, who has been seen regularly inside and outside of the building. The inn is also the scene of a tragic love story played out during the English Civil War, when it was a popular watering hole for royalist soldiers. Margaret Moore, the daughter of the inn's landlord, fell in love with a royalist soldier called Rupert, who was serving under Lord Goring whilst the royalists held Christchurch Castle in 1644. Eventually Lord Goring retreated, but Margaret and Rupert continued their affair by using the secret tunnel between the pub and the castle. Much to the disgust of her father, Margaret fell pregnant, and unwilling to taint the family name, he bricked his daughter and grandson up in the cheese pantry, leaving them to starve to death. It is said that in the dead of night, you can hear a newborn child crying in the darkness, and Margaret scratching at the bricks in an attempt to get out. Have you ever been to the Old George Inn, or the Christchurch Priory, Carly? And if so, have you ever had any experiences there? Tara Wellman, Canastota, New York. Canastota is a village located inside the town of Lenox in Madison County, New York, United States. It is home to the International Boxing Hall of Fame and has produced 2 world champions in Carmen Basilio and Billy Backus. Canastota has also hosted numerous past and current champions, including Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, and Joe Frazier. In complete contrast, it is also known as an onion-growing region. But more importantly, it's the hometown of Tara. Now we have to admit, Tara, it was hard to find anything remotely creepy about where you live. So we've had to move down the road a bit to Chittenango. Gulf Road in Chittenango is creepy enough, with its twists and turns, but at night it takes on a whole different persona and is reputed to be haunted by several ghosts. Rumour has it that in the early 1900s, cults formed in the village and sacrifices of domestic animals occurred at a house located on the side of Gulf Road. Since those days, many have claimed to see a burning cross in the woods that surround the road, and the shadow of a woman standing in the middle of the road, who disappears when terrified motorists slam their brakes on. A shadowy female on the side of the road is also another unexplained occurrence, as well as white glowing orbs emanating through the dense woodland edging the road. If you check out the road on internet forums, it warns users not to go into the woods on this road at night. Supposedly, if you do, you'll see bonfires on the wooden hills that will beckon you towards them. But when you get too close, you'll be left in the dark and completely lost. If you recognize the name Chittenango, it might be because it was the home of Al Frank Baum, the author of The Wizard of Oz, so could have something to do with the warnings to avoid this road at night. After all, he did have the strangest of imaginations. But it seems Gulf Road is not the only road Tara has to worry about near her hometown, as just a few miles away is another haunted road known as 13 Curves. Legend tells of a young married couple who died when they were thrown from their car in a gruesome crash on Cedar Vale Road. In another version of the same event, the newlyweds' car breaks down on the road while they're on their way to a friend's house in Otisco Lake. The bride waited in her car while her husband walked to find help, but she fell asleep only to be awoken the next morning by the sound of a police officer tapping on her window. The police officer informed her new husband was hanging by a rope under the tree they parked under. After the tragedy, the winding strip of road became known as the 13 Curves, due to the 1-mile strip of road having 13 turns. To this day, people claim to see the bride, especially on Halloween, glowing and wearing white as she floats, pining for her husband. Tara, we'd love to know if you've ever visited Gulf Road or 13 Curves. Kimmy Kimja, San Diego. Kimmy lives in the US city San Diego, and even though there are lots of creepy things going on there, Kimmy has asked us to look at the cute but tragic story of Lucy, the white deer, and that's exactly what we're going to do. In 1965, a couple of fallow white deer either escaped from a zoo or was set free by a private owner. The male was never seen again, and his fate is unknown, but the female was regularly spotted in the Mission Hills area of San Diego, and to the delight of locals, the white deer became a welcome sight, frequenting the hiking paths throughout the hills. Visitors to Presidio Park, near the Father Junipero Serra Museum, also were regularly greeted by the white deer, and the locals named her Lucy. She was casually adopted by the community as its unofficial mascot. Salt licks and other treats were left for her daily, and she was a treasured part of life for those who were lucky enough to catch a glimpse of her. But on December 13, 1975, Animal Control received many calls about Lucy trying to cross busy Taylor Street. Concerned for her safety, Animal Regulation Officer Paul Coplin tracked her down and shot her with a tranquilizer dart so he could move her away from danger. But sadly, instead of sending her to sleep, the dart killed her after she suffered an adverse reaction. After Lucy's death, the public was outraged and heartbroken, and an investigation was launched into the officer who fired the deadly shot. It was found to be a tragic accident. Locals raised over $800 for a memorial for their beloved doe, and a year after her death, a monument was dedicated to Lucy at Inspiration Point. It was designed by Charles Forst and consists of a circular slab of concrete that has a watering hole in the middle. Tracks of deer are set into the slab, and on the top edge are 3 native rocks of various sizes and a plaque. The entire monument is covered by nearby trees and is fairly easy to miss if you aren't really looking closely, but it occupies a tranquil spot in memory of the much-loved deer. Although if you didn't know the story, the monument would seem a bit confusing. Some believe that Lucy is actually buried beneath the monument, although we could find no evidence of that. However, we did find evidence that Lucy still haunts the area, and those who visit the area believe she is still alive after spotting her white fur in the undergrowth. Others have reported seeing a mist shadow of a deer, also believed to be the spirit of Lucy. Her spirit has been spotted throughout the park, although is usually seen near her monument, and the most common time that she appears is at dusk and very early in the morning, when she can often be heard rustling in the bushes. It seems that even after more than 4 decades, Lucy is still wandering the park and supposedly haunting the area that she loved in life. In recent years, a bench has also been put in place near the monument that also mentions Lucy the deer. What an incredibly interesting and fascinating story, Kimmy. We're very glad you brought this one to our attention, and do hope we're pronouncing your name correctly. Taylor Nardelli, Alberta, Canada. Taylor lives in Alberta, Canada, a vast province and a region of outstanding natural beauty, with some of the most spectacular scenery and sublime wilderness in the world, all with the backdrop of the snow-capped Canadian Rockies. However, where there is beauty, there always lurks a beast, and for Taylor, we're looking at the true story of Swift Runner. Swift Runner was a Cree Indian who lived during the last century in what is now central Alberta. His background was not unusual for the time. He received a solid, useful Cree education and later married and had 6 children. He traded with the Hudson's Bay Company, and in 1875 he served as a guide for the Northwest Mounted Police. Swift Runner was a large man, standing at around 6 feet 3, and he was well known all around the settlement as a smart and trustworthy worker. However, his ruination came from his fondness for whiskey that was smuggled into the area disguised as medicine, and when he drank he was violent and unpredictable, and became known as an ugly customer to meet. Eventually he lost his job with the police, and they sent him back to his tribe, where he caused so much trouble he was eventually turfed out of his community altogether, and in the winter of 1878, Swift Runner retreated to the wilderness with his wife and family. However, by the spring of that year, the police started to hear rumours of Swift Runner's erratic behaviour, and a Cree chief told them Swift Runner had turned cannibal. Officers went to investigate, but could find no sign of Swift Runner or his family. Later, Swift went to the police himself, telling them his wife had committed suicide, and the rest of his family had died of starvation. However, the officers were suspicious of his story, as he looked particularly well fed. So, accompanied by the man himself, the police travelled to his family's camp in the wilderness, just north of Camp Saskatchewan. There they found the remnants of a campfire, with piles of bones and human skulls scattered nearby. Some of the bones were broken in half and hollowed out, with the marrow missing. Their worst fears were confirmed when they found a pot full of what was believed to be human fat. Swift Runner quickly confessed, but blamed what he had done to his family on being possessed by an evil spirit known as the Wendigo, a flesh-eating spirit that tormented him and gave him nightmares. It's worth pointing out that Wendigo is a spirit believed by the local tribes, thought to take possession of vulnerable people, causing them to engage in cannibalism and other forms of antisocial behaviour, and it lends its name to the controversial, unproven medical term Wendigo psychosis, described by some psychiatrists as a culture-bound syndrome, with symptoms such as intense craving for human flesh and fear of becoming a cannibal. Although, as you might expect, this claim did not wash with the police, and Swift was sent to trial for murder and cannibalism. The jury also didn't buy his supernatural claim, and after 20 minutes, they sentenced him to death. Swift Runner was eventually executed on December 20th, 1879, and became the first man to legally be hanged in Alberta, Canada. Moments before the trapdoor opened, he gave a speech admitting his guilt. He died without a struggle, and his body was cut down and buried in an unmarked grave. Nowadays, Wendigos are often referred to in modern horror fiction, most notably in Stephen King's novel Pet Sematary, and they often appear as something completely different in video games, fantasy films, and horror movies. Even we've done a video on them. So Taylor, that's the story of Swift Runner. We hope you've enjoyed, and we hope all the patrons featured in this video have also enjoyed. We'd like to say a massive thank you for not only supporting our videos, but also giving us incredible topics to talk about. If you want your hometown featured in a Too Close to Home video, then please check out our Patreon for more information. Thank you again, and as always, we'll see you in the next video.